Antitrust law has traditionally started with sort of economic analysis and a series of consistent principles, and that came under attack in the Obama administration, mostly from what people think of as very progressive kind of left-wing law professors trying to get over this very economic analysis and look at broader questions like intellectual property and freedom of expression and these more amorphous things. And one of the questions I was raising was, well, if you wipe out the old Chicago school, Richard Posner approach to antitrust enforcement, what do you replace it with? What are the new rules? I mean, we are a nation of laws, not men and women, so what are the rules that will take over from these really clearly defined principles? And that's the same question I have for incoming President Trump. He, in a kind of ad hoc way, says, well, I don't like the Time Warner deal, it's too big, we're going to break up these big things. But that is not what antitrust is about. It's not about bigness per se. I mean, economics recognizes that there are many advantages sometimes to bigness. Bigness may come from innovation. There may be consumer advantages. So there are a very sophisticated body of law and rules there. If he's going to throw them out, it's hard for me to see what do you replace it with.
But in terms of the kind of people that you imagine are going to be around the hoop on those big issues, do you think that major mega transactions will be able for the past couple of years, lots of big deals have actually not happened, in part because there was a worry that D.C. would block it.
Well, let's take the Time Warner AT&T transaction. Under traditional antitrust analysis, there is virtually no overlap in their businesses. It's going to be big, but in theory, there should really be nothing in existing case law and doctrine to stop that, even though it's big. The chorus of opposition to that mostly came from the left. The very progressive, anti-big forces. Trump then hopped in kind of on the populist side of it and said, oh, I'm against these big things too. They have too much power. If you analyze it economically, they do not have too much power because they are constrained by competition at every layer. And that competitive landscape doesn't change at all with that merger. So it was always going to, that to me was going to be the test case, that if you throw out the old rules, which would have let it go forward, then what's the new rule that's going to block this kind of thing? And I've never seen anything from Trump to suggest that he is an antitrust geek, like a lot of these other people. And the new Attorney General, too, by the way. Total blank slate here. He wasn't picked because of his antitrust expertise.
Let me throw a different one at you. We talked about Masterson this morning. We talked about Sprint bringing back 5,000 jobs. One of the transactions that's been sitting on the table for so long that people want to happen, if D.C. would allow it, would be Sprint and T-Mobile to merge. That would make a lot of strategic sense. But there has been a view that D.C., at least in an Obama world, would not approve a transaction like that. If you were brought into the board of Sprint or T-Mobile today to say and to opine on whether a transaction like this would be allowed in a Trump administration, you would tell them what?
Well, this is a simple one because under traditional antitrust analysis, you block this. These are direct competitors. You're taking it from 4 major carriers to 3. And by the way, if you want to look at jobs, when you have horizontal competitors who merge, one of the main reasons to merge is to be more efficient and to get rid of overlapping jobs. So you lose jobs.
Right.
I don't see this being a win for Trump philosophy on either level. It reduces, it does not increase competition, it's not good for consumers, and it costs jobs.
Okay, but there's a cynical view that Trump and Masterson has befriended Trump in part and done some of these announcements in part because of a hope that long-term a transaction like that might be.
We saw that in the stock prices. We saw Sprint as well as TMUS go up.
Well, here's exactly the problem when you start substituting kind of ad hoc judgment for rules. When you don't have any rules anymore, then you start wondering, well, then why did this one go through and not that one? Then you start saying, well, who gave the money, or who's the friend, and who's the crony? That, to me, would be the worst landscape for antitrust enforcement. And by the way, going back to your initial question, I think there's a good chance Time Warner does go through because, in the end, they have a good argument to make. They have powerful lobbying forces. They have good lawyers. They're going to be all over this with the career people who are comfortable with this language. And I think it'll be hard for Trump to just step in and block it without any good reason.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.